So for our 20th class, we are inching closer and closer to the American Revolution, which I find a very interesting topic. And I started class with complaining, with griping. I asked you all, hey, what is wrong with the following things? What is wrong with Clarenceville? What is wrong with Michigan? What is wrong with the United States? Let it rip. Let's complain. Let's gripe. And at Clarenceville, the dress code, it's sexist. The social studies department has bad breath and they don't dress very well. A lot to gripe about Clarenceville, Michigan. Oh, my car insurance is so expensive and these roads are full of potholes, this, that, and the other thing. In the United States, we are so divided right now. There's all sorts of cultural tension in this country right now. Okay, so we pooled it all together and it was fairly easy. Plenty to complain about, right? And then I posed a question to you. What are you going to do about it? So you have a choice. Essentially, you have two choices. You can either say, it is what it is. I accept it. I'm not going to do anything about it. What are you going to do? Or you can take some steps to fight against it. Okay, now to expand upon this, if you decide to fight against it, are you going to use nonviolence or violence? What works best? When is there a time and a place for each? Here's Martin Luther King and his friends. They're walking. Walking is nonviolent. This is arson. Arson is violent. So my question to you is, when is there a time and a place for each? Okay. Now, this is kind of the philosophical foundation of what happened in U.S. history where people had to make that decision. Okay. Now, revolution, if you're not familiar with revolution, let me simplify it for you. It's essentially out with the old, in with the new. And this could be political revolution. It could be an economic revolution. It can be a cultural revolution. Revolution has a big umbrella of a lot of different things, but essentially it's out with the old, in with the new. And if you look back in history, the people living in the 13 colonies were getting fed up with the old way and were inching closer to a new way. And because I'm in a philosophical vein here, I'm going to quote Camus and asked, what is revolution? Camus said, what is a man in revolt? A man who says no. But his refusal is not a renunciation. He is a man who says yes, beginning with his very first move. What that means is, once you say no to the old way, that's just your starting point. You have to figure out the new way. And it's a little bit of a gamble, to be honest with you. Anytime you make a major change, whether it's historical, cultural, personal, it might be better, it might be worse, it might be the same. You take that step. It could work out, it might not work out. And that's a gamble that people take. It's a calculated gamble. Okay, now getting into the content, and it is fat content. Okay, these are the content terms I need you to know from today. Loyalist. Now, the Loyalist was the name given to those in the colonies, guesstimation 1/5 to 1/3 of the total population who said, we support the British. We don't want to be free. We want to be part of England. We don't want any revolution. Those are the people who say, hey, there might be some problems, but we don't want to do anything about it. Okay, so there was a big contingency of people who were loyalists. Now, the second content term is republicanism. Now, this is a system of government where people self-govern. Like in modern times, there's 535 individuals who speak on our behalf. 435 House members, 100 senators, and they speak on our behalf. Now, this is a stark difference from monarchy, where the king, who had absolute power predicated on the divine right of kings, can do whatever they want. This is rule from one man, whereas republicanism is rule from the people. It's pretty revolutionary in terms of thought, and that's what we are today in America. We are a republic. So this is a stark contrast to what the British had. Okay, that's republicanism. Now, impressment is pretty shady. It's pretty shady. I mean, I don't think people like being forced to do anything or told what they have to do. And the British would forcibly enlist sailors into the Navy. And that made people upset. Obviously, you have an uncle, a brother, a friend. Hey, where's Jim? Oh, some British guy forced him on a boat to be a sailor. Oh, man, that sucks. I mean, it wasn't a very nice practice. You can see this picture here. People are being forced into joining the Navy. So that was a bit of a bugaboo for the colonists, and you can understand that. Okay, so that's impressment. Now, a group formed called the Sons of Liberty, and this was a secret organization formed to oppose the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act, this is money being paid out by the colonists they did not want to pay out. And members spoke and they wrote and they took action against the British, especially the stamp tax and the tax on tea. And people drank a lot of tea. So we see the seeds of revolution forming. People who are saying, we are not going to pay to a government we consider tyrannical and not listening to us. Okay, so the Sons of Liberty formed. Now, this expression, no taxation without representation, you're going to hear this 100 times. Okay, if you leave class without remembering this, I think you were asleep. Okay, because this was the rallying cry from colonists saying, you cannot tax us without us having a say in the matter. And I don't think they were wrong in saying that, because the British were giving taxes to the colonists. They had to pay more money, and the colonists had zero say. The parliament that made these rules, colonists had no say in it, and that made them very resentful. I don't know if you've seen the movie Friday, but this expression plays true in history. When you mess with people's money, you mess with their emotions. You cannot mess with people's money. It gets them very worked up. Throughout history, throughout time, that doesn't change. And here's another example. You don't mess with people's money. Now, the Boston Massacre is when it really spilled over. This friction went into violence, where on March 5th, 1770, British troops fired on American civilians. Okay, these are just regular people, and it killed 5 of them. And that really, people who were on the fence, who were saying, I don't know, should I be a loyalist? Should I be a patriot? This pushed a lot of people to the patriot side. Go, this government, this British government, shoots civilians? I don't think I want to side with them anymore. And you can get where they were coming from in that thinking. Okay, that was the Boston Massacre. Now, there were the Sons of Liberty, and there were the Daughters of Liberty. So women were involved in the mix. Now, similar to the Sons of Liberty, they were upset about British taxes. And what they did is they wouldn't buy British tea. They would not buy British clothes. They make their own clothes. And again, you hit people in the pocketbook. I think that's a very good way to fight things. Hit people in the pocketbook. Boycott. Don't give them the money. And that has been an effective tool of revolution throughout history. Believe me when I tell you. Okay? And then we see the first Continental Congress form. So we see this formation of an organized government. They met in Philadelphia in 1774 in response to the British efforts to tax the colony. So you see we're getting closer and closer to that magic year, 1776. That's a big, big year in U.S. history. So we're getting close. 1774, we have delegates meeting to discuss things. We see the seeds of organized government here, okay? And then the Somerset Decision was the last piece of vocab in your book. And in 1772, the British Lord Chief Justice had a case of a guy named James Somerset. And James Somerset was a slave, but he was set free. So essentially, Britain said, you cannot have slavery in England. However, it can persist in the British colonies. Now, history would have been a lot different if they said no slavery in Britain or any of our colonies. Now, who knows what would have happened? Would the Civil War have broken out early? Could we have avoided the Civil War? Would the Southern economies that were predicated on slavery, would they have changed things up? I don't know. However, this set a precedent in Britain, but it did not apply to the colonies. Okay, so to wrap it up, if you go to Google Classroom, I have 2 questions for you, okay? Did Americans' revolutionary ideas contradict their attitudes toward Indians and slaves? How might colonists have answered this contradiction? Okay, so these revolutionary ideas that freedom for all men, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal, all these American ideals, well, how, a little cognitive dissonance, how can you justify that in terms of treatment of Indians and slaves if you follow these American ideals? Okay, and then the second part's a little more straightforward. I want you to define and tell me the historical significance of the following items. You can see those are the terms that I just went over, and they're also in your book, pages 135 to 145. A fat 10 pages, okay? So that's a little bit of a breakdown of what we did, and I appreciate you watching.